The Ides of March are upon us. Welcome everyone to another exciting episode of the Zenescope podcast, Everything Zen, where we discuss everything in the Zenescope universe, from Van Helsing to myths and legends to Day of the Dead, Gretel, and so much more. This is Zenescope. I'm your host, Mark Sells, and we're happy to have you with us for our March 2021 podcast. This month, as we battle through March Madness and a touch of spring break fever, we have an abbreviated podcast for you, but still a very good one, as we sit down with one of our amazing creators, Dawn McTeigue, and discuss her creative process and inspirations behind so many amazing Zenescope covers and art. But before we bring Dawn in, let's go to Chris Samson real quick for our podcast monthly giveaway.
Hey everybody, this is Agent Chris from Chip reporting in. We're currently working with Belle DeMarco, codename Belle the Beast Hunter. This March, I am announcing the details for our next Podcast Word of the Month contest. Whenever you hear this sound during the podcast, we'll reveal a secret word or phrase. Email us at info@zenescope.com with that word or phrase, and we'll send you a promo code to use on your next purchase on zenescope.com. As a reminder, there's only one submission allowed per person. We will also be doing a raffle drawing for one lucky winner from all the Podcast Word of the Month submissions. Our grand prize is a limited edition Belle in-store collectible cover by Paul Green and Ula Moss, which is Grimm Fairy Tales Volume 2, Issue 29, Cover I. We are also giving away 3 second-place prizes from those podcast submissions. The second-place prize is our 2020 Book Club Season 2 collectible cover, featuring Belle as well. This book is Belle, Hearts and Minds One-Shot, Cover E, by Ula Moss. So, be sure to listen carefully and email us at info@zenescope.com for your chance to win. Back to you, Mark.
Thanks, Chris. As a friendly reminder, the March podcast contest runs through the end of the month, so you can send us an email any day or time up until midnight on Wednesday, March 31st. The winners will all be announced the first week in April. The March podcast word of the month is DeMarco. That's D-I-M-A-R-C-O, as in Annabelle or Belle DeMarco, our well-known beast hunter. Now, without further ado, let's get to our featured guest. She is a self-taught artist from Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and has done cover art for DC, Image, Dark Horse, and of course, yours truly here at Zenescope, where she's illustrated Van Helsing, Robin Hood, Wonderland, Red Riding Hood, and so much more. This year, she has a series of incredible cyberpunk covers that are truly out of this world. Her art prints and latest cyberpunk cover are all available on Zenescope.com right now. This month, Dawn sat down with our co-founder, Ralph Tedesco, to talk about her early dreams and aspirations, her entry into the comic book world, overcoming the artist curse, her inspirations, collaborators, and her evolution as an artist. Take it away, Ralph.
Guys, I have Dawn McTeigue with me today. Exciting, very exciting, because Dawn's been doing artwork for us for 10 years? 10 years?
Something like that. Not quite that long, I don't
almost
think.
10.
But
8
almost.
years, maybe 8 years. 8 years.
Yeah.
Great, just a phenomenal artist, great person, and it was just, it's a pleasure to have you on here, Dawn. So welcome to Everything Zen.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
I'm still getting used to Dawn, by the way, because she changed her hair and didn't tell me.
She did.
Completely changed it. Threw me for a loop. Wait till you guys see it. It's great. So my first question, Dawn, what were you like as a little, because as long as I've known you, I have no idea what you were like as a child. What was Dawn like as a child growing up?
Supremely stubborn and into art, so I just drew all the time. It's pretty much all I did.
So nothing's changed? Nothing's
changed.
It's perfect. Makes sense. Stubborn little Dawn, drawing all the time. Were you getting in trouble at all when you were a kid, or were you pretty good?
I think I was, it was just such a chicken. So I didn't like getting in trouble. So I would kind of do whatever I could to not get in trouble. So probably just silent and stubborn in the corner, very upset about something, but I wouldn't really say anything. So, broody.
Brooding child. So as a child, you were stubborn and brooding, and you started drawing when you were, I guess, a young tyke.
Yeah.
How old were you when you first started, like, doodling or drawing or whatnot?
And I started really getting into probably coloring and stuff. Like the first, the youngest, my picture that my mom took of me when I was really getting into drawing and coloring, I think I was 2. So,
Jesus.
Yeah.
2.
And then, they just got me colored pencils and art supplies and stuff. And that, speaking from a parent's perspective, if your kid's really into something and it keeps them out of trouble and shit, invest, my friend.
Right. At 2, that's got to be pretty. I don't know what I was doing at 2. I wasn't doing much, probably. But I have
no memory of this. It's just my mom has pictures of me coloring and drawing.
What were your, like, what? Okay, so you're a little older now, let's say.
A bit.
No. Let's say not now, but you're like you're a little older than 2. Let's fast forward to your, a few years later. What's Dawn's sort of dream growing up? Like, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Interesting. I think it's always been art, I never dared to dream that I would get into comics, though, so
what do you mean dare to dream? Like, were you a comic book fan growing up and you just didn't think about, like, oh, I can't make it as a comic book artist, or did you not even really think about comics in that?
No, I did think about comics for sure, but I didn't really know about comics, like American comics, until I was 19, because I grew up overseas. So I saw like Japanese anime comics a lot, and loved to draw those. And I really got into the art and stuff like that. I couldn't read the stories, but I would, look at the art for sure. And then once I did see, Gen 13 and stuff like that in the late 90s, I got super into it. But that's when I didn't dare to dream that I could personally ever, like, draw for comics. It's difficult, and
right.
I try to be relatively honest with myself and be like, okay, I'm definitely not that good,
You thought that when you were still, I guess, like, figuring stuff out, when you were still, like, just, I assume you were self-taught, right?
Yes, I am self-taught. And so I just, would look at the comics and, study them and all of that. So but then in meeting Jo and stuff like that, she's fearless and like, yeah, you can be a comic book artist. I'm like, no, I can't. She's like, yeah, watch me.
Right. And that's how we discovered you, was through Jo at the
I would have never come up and said hello, ever.
That's funny. You told me that before. I think you said that before, but it is funny hearing that. But yeah, you kind of crashed into the world of comics out of the blue, which we can get to in a second. But so you are self-taught, you're learning to draw, you're sort of like you're aware of comic books exist, but you're not really thinking, oh, I'm gonna draw for
no, I just did random illustration shit.
So were you, like, I guess my question, and this is good for, like, any artists maybe listening, we're aspiring to break into the comic book industry. Like, what was your end game? Did you have one where you sort of like, well, I want to make a career of this, I just don't know how? Or were you sitting there going like, hey, I'll just start going to Comic-Con and see what happens?
Oh, once I actually decided to make a run for comics.
Yeah, I mean, I guess a 2-part question. Like, when did you decide to make to make a living in artwork at some level? What was your plan? Like, what were you? If it wasn't necessarily, hey, I'm going to be in comic, but I know I want to do artwork for a living. What was that? What did that look like?
That looked like, me just doing, one job to the next, illustration stuff. And I did that for a long time, mostly like kids art and stuff.
Okay.
And then as far as like making a run for comics, Joe was the one who really decided we were making a run for comics. And so then once I sort of set my mind to that and was like, okay, well, I personally don't think I have a shot, but Joe believes, so I will I will go in that direction. Then, I started motivating pretty hard. And with that, it was literally just, draw harder, draw faster.
Well, yeah, because also in comics, and maybe if maybe some people don't realize that there's a bunch of different facets, right?
Yeah.
There's interiors, there's interior pencils, there's interior colors, there's lettering, there's all kinds of different things, and then there's cover art, and there's two different. Like some artists do both. They do interior sequentials, they call them, or they'll do cover art, or they might do one or the other. Right. You've always kind of done both since I've known you, I think.
Correct.
But it is a different style. Like it's a different, when you're doing sequentials, to me that's a real commitment. It's a real commitment because it's a grind, right?
Absolutely.
Like sequential artwork compared to a cover, which I'm doing cover art. I'm sure it's not fast either. But what's sort of like the difference? Do you think, like the biggest difference to you in those two?
Okay, well, this answer is not the same for everybody, but I'll definitely answer it as far as me. There is a big difference in how you draw it. Everything in a story, which if you're drawing interiors or sequentials, you are telling the story, right? And there is kind of a rule of thumb in comics that someone should be able to pretty much get the gist of the story without having to read it. So you do need to visually tell the story from A to Z. So storytelling is key. In covers, it's almost the opposite, at least in the cover style that I do or the covers that I'm hired to work on. Storytelling covers are not really what I'm hired to do. I'm hired to work on the limited edition books, the sort of higher price point books, that kind of thing. Storytelling covers are not really what's going to help that book sell. It's more of a pinup cover book. And again, this is the work that I personally do. I'm not talking about everybody. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, it's a completely... I lost my thing.
You lost your...
I lost my headphone. It's a completely different way of looking at the piece. Sometimes, a storytelling idea will come to me about a character or a cover, but I know that that's not necessarily going to help in the job that I was hired to do as far as drawing a cover. And so then I need to kind of rethink and come up with a different idea. And the real commitment about interior art is your deadline is, 2 months out or whatever, but you have 21 pages to draw. So you have you can't draw one and, wash your hands of it and move along. Right. It is a massive commitment of time. And I paint and draw the entire interiors. So I'm the penciler, the inker, and the colorist.
Wow, which is insane. Which for those who might not know comic book art or comics too well, that is not always how it works. Usually not, but in some cases someone will do all facets. But a lot of times there's an illustrator does the pencils, then an inker sometimes, and a colorist. So that's a process where you might have 3 artists on every page, not one. So that's got to take a long time. Must take a long time. How long does it take you to do a page of artwork, do you think, right now?
Wow, with the painting, I really need to figure that out because I get asked that a lot.
But you can't really tell.
No, because like what I'll do is I will sketch the entire book, I'll ink the entire book, I'll paint the entire book. So I would say, and because my life is considerably more broken up, I don't just sit and draw all day long. And then I have covers in between and all of that stuff. But I'm going to slot myself a good 3 months to get Divinica issue 6 done.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, that's a big commitment. I assume like when you're doing, I don't know what your preference is. I mean, I don't know if you have a preference or you just like both equally. When you're, what it sounds like, us doing sequentials and pages in an issue, it gives you the ability to tell a story.
Correct.
Or to help tell a story with the writer.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, because a writer and an artist are working sort of in tandem to tell a story. And that's not always the same case in covers, like you mentioned. And what Dawn was alluding to is sort of like she's hired to do a lot of pinup covers, which are it's a little bit different than doing like a regular cover that's telling a story of what that book is going to be. Sometimes it is. Sometimes there's a combination of both, but a lot of times you're doing like a badass, sexy girl pinup, right?
Yeah.
For a cover, but not always. But I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know all your. You're like you guys never hired me to do.
You don't. I was pitching hard for an A cover.
Why don't you do one? You should do it.
I didn't get it.
To us, ours.
Yeah.
Oh, you can do an A cover anytime you want. You just got to come to me.
Okay.
You got to go around your editor. You should do an A cover. That'd be awesome. So, like, do you find that is that important to you to be able to do interiors and to tell stories?
Honestly, not for the storytelling aspect of it. I personally am not a storyteller. I have no story in my soul that I wish to get out. Like, there is not a writing bone in my body.
So what draws you? So what draws you to doing interiors besides Joe making you?
No, it's for the artistic ability to do those other things, you know. And it isn't that I am not satisfied only drawing covers, but I don't feel that covers are giving me the almost the artistic challenge that interiors will give me. And that isn't to say that covers aren't challenging. There are, you know, if I have to fucking draw a Gotham, I'm challenged. Don't you worry. Right. But there's just different angles. There's different things that you need to do. And I really do want to have a series that I'm working on and that, you know, I get to draw the interiors and I get to do the whole thing. So for me, it's coming far more from an artistic standpoint. And don't get me wrong. It's not that I don't care about the story that I'm illustrating. I deeply care. I just don't personally write or have a story myself. You know?
It's easier for you to take a script, talk to the writer, get a sense of what they want to portray. But you're still a vision. You're still sort of you're sort of like the cinematographer of a movie in a sense, where you have your director and your writer and the, you know, and then who wants to tell the story, but you have to be the eyeballs to it.
Right. And Joe's really good with that too. She really lets me just kind of, and for anyone listening, Joe is JP Roth, who's writing Divinica, the series that I draw interiors for. And she knows, I mean, we go way back. So she knows how to work with me. She knows when, you know, to let me just kind of do my thing. And, you know, it's a running joke. I always give her some piece somewhere is going to have antlers. I don't know why. I need to see a psychiatrist about my antler fetish.
Wow.
I don't know.
Trying to think of the covers you do for us. How many have antlers now?
Oh, I try to rein my nonsense in with you guys a little bit.
You know, we're gonna have to talk. Sometimes you don't need to rein the nonsense. Or maybe
Maybe a little bit.
Maybe a little bit. So that's interesting though. I think it's cool that you have this affinity for both, where everybody's different, certainly. And I know some artists who don't, like, some cover artists are just like, yeah, I'm never doing interiors. Like, I'm done with that game. And then others who love it. And I think you're one of those like unicorns who could do both well and do both and enjoy doing both, I think.
Oh, thank you. Well, I have so much to learn about interior art. I know that I do still approach it as a cover artist, but in starting my career, I was super undecided as to what I even wanted to do. I was talking to an artist in Artist Alley at San Diego, like before I entered comics. And she was just like, she gave me such great advice. She was like, at the end of the day, you're going to need to decide what it is you're trying to do. Because I was like, well, maybe I want to be an inker. And I don't know if I'm good enough to be a penciler. And I don't care for digital coloring, so I'm not going to do that. I had one decision made. And so like my first comic book, I did inking over Crumb. For Joe's first Ancient Dreams. Now, granted, a lot of decisions ended up being made for me because I entered comics with a 6-month-old baby. So it's not like I could really put in the hours
Right.
he could, but I could ink. So I inked all of his and then did the cover pencils. And really it was out of necessity that I didn't, that I just stuck to penciling for a really long time and just to covers, lack of speed, lack of time, all that kind of stuff. But, over time, I'm grateful. My kids are growing up. The 6-month-old is now 10. So I have a little bit more time to get into interiors more.
Yeah, because Dawn, I mean, you never really, you didn't start coloring your stuff for us for a while, probably like not till about 3 or 4 years in.
Oh, even less than that. Like I only got into coloring my own work in 2017, mid-2017.
Was it okay? So you were 5 years, I guess. 5 years. And interesting. Was that what's one thing you wished you knew when you began your career in this field?
It's an excellent question. What's something I wish I knew?
Yeah.
That it was going to work. If I wouldn't have been so like, I had a kind of a little bit of a negative attitude about myself and a negative attitude about my chances. And really Joe just kind of had to drag me a lot of the way. Sometimes I'd just be like, no, I'm not, I can't do that. And is
that something that was, is that your personality sometimes, being a little
absolutely too realistic, I'd say.
Realistic? Not necessarily like for lack of confidence, but a little bit like jaded and going the chances and like weighing the chances of something happening.
Yeah, and so yes, absolutely, it runs in my personality. I am that way. But I would have these extremely lofty goals that are completely not realistic and then be super bummed when I don't reach them. And I wish I had just kind of taken everything a little bit more in stride, been prepared to be surprised and happy, and then get happy when something good happens, as opposed to just kind of being like, well, did I earn this? I don't know. And,
Right.
Do they really want to hire me? I don't know. And just kind of take things a little bit more as the blessing, I guess, that for lack of a better word, that they were, and that things worked out, and, approach it a little bit more happy and surprised and, positive and confident. And I'm not a confident artist. And so, I second guess everything. It's kind of my own personality backfiring on me in the way that I entered comics, and I would have had an easier, more fun time if I had been a little bit more happy-go-lucky.
Yeah, but that's also, it's the artist curse. I think a lot of artists are like this,
That is true.
At least a lot of ones I know, not everyone. I mean, I know plenty of artists who don't lack for confidence and have done well. But I think a lot of artists and writers and any creatives, are like this.
That is true.
To a point. I could answer that question a million ways. If people ask me if I wish I would have known, what I would have known before starting Zenescope. I can do it. I might write a book on this.
You should. I want to find out now. God. Answer the question, Ralph.
No. When you interview me, I'll answer that question.
I'll put you on the hot seat.
Please. Do you is it important to you to be, what do you aspire to be in this field? Is it important to you to be the top of your field?
Absolutely. I am deeply competitive.
Are you?
Oh yeah.
It's interesting. It's interesting, right? Because you had this sort of crisis of confidence, at least early on. And
I do every day, though. I have a crisis of confidence every fucking day.
Right.
So
but you're different. I mean, Dawn now is Dawn now compared to Dawn I knew 8 years ago is definitely a lot more confident.
Really?
That I see.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
I think so. I mean, I don't talk to you every day, but I mean, I've known you a long time, and I think I see that.
No, well, that's encouraging. Probably also I'm a little more comfortable with you guys. I'm not terrified of you as much as I used to be. Right. Oh my God, I can't piss off Zenescope.
I don't instill terror anymore. Start using the old school tactics, these mafioso tactics. So what do you what do you aspire to do? Since you are competitive and you do want to be, considered top of your field, what does that look like to you?
It looks like having a body of work that is respectable, I suppose. And that's one of the reasons really why I'm working on interiors, that I want to have that in my body of work. I want to have a series that I started and finished and, really stuck through it and worked on it. And it, I know that art is so very personal and art is so subjective. So it's not like I can say, well, I want to be everybody's favorite artist. It's like an ice cream deciding it wants to be every fucking person's favorite flavor. I mean, how's that going to work, No, but right. At least I want to be able to hold my own with the big boys and, be in the list, in the paragraph, in the sentence of where someone is like, oh yeah, so these are some of the female artists that I respect or something like that. And, be somebody that can actually help the new artists that are coming into comics and, kind of have that, because I got that. I got so much help from you guys, from Campbell, from Ebas, from Benitez, from all these artists that I was shaking in my boots to talk with. I got a lot of help from them, and I want to be that and pay it forward, Right. And actually be somebody that somebody would want to even ask my opinion.
That's a good quality. That's a really good quality. Not everybody has that,
Yeah.
I don't think. Especially in this industry. It's a competitive industry, and it's a very, even though it's small and it's a niche industry, there is a lot of bitterness, and there's a lot of sort of rivalries that have formed over the years, which is like nobody would know going into it.
Yeah, I'm still blissfully unaware. So happy.
Yeah. I mean, maybe. I mean, I've seen things over the last 15 years, and it's not like it's not comic book wars out here. Nobody's getting shot on the Vegas Strip, guys. This isn't East Coast, West Coast. But you never know. You never know. I'm just kidding. So I guess another question. I lost a follow up to that because it was.
Oh shit! Sorry.
I know I went on a tangent and I had a good follow up. It might come back to me. It was just about aspiring and to being a certain point in your career. I wanted to apply it to sort of the rivalries that form in the industry,
mm-hmm.
And how has that affected? I guess it hasn't affected you.
Not at all.
Right. Interesting. That's fair. We can move on then. I lost my question. One thing I did want to ask. about inspiration. This podcast, we really started to, when we started the podcast, like it was sort of our guy, our web guy, Mark, he develops and runs our website, and he had done a lot of different he had done podcasts before he approached me with this idea, and we kind of didn't know what our way in was.
Okay.
And I was like, well, I don't really know anything about podcasting. What do we do? And then like it was sort of like this idea, a simple idea about like, hey, it's about Zenescope. Like, let's podcast about like what we do, and what do we do best is like female protagonists, badass females, even though it's two dudes talking about it. But we'd like to bring on female creators as much as possible, and that's what our sort of way in is. And female, and not just artists, but actresses, actors, writers. We just had a writer on named Latoya Morgan, who's a showrunner. I guess it's a long-winded way of asking, as a badass female yourself in this industry, it used to be a very male-dominated industry, but you're seeing more females. Who has inspired you? What female, if any, have inspired you the most during your career? Is there anyone?
It would be hard for me to pick just one, but a fair few names pop into my mind, and definitely JP Roth. I mean, I wouldn't be here without her.
I figured you were going to mention her. I mean, honestly, like with us, we wouldn't have met you without JP either.
No,
probably. Well, maybe eventually.
No, I would never have walked up and said hello. It was very difficult for me to, like, I wanted a Campbell calendar, and I waited in line twice and was probably like beet red and could barely speak by the time I got to buying the calendar from him at San Diego. I'm very shy. I probably would have never walked up. So, that would JP Roth. I wouldn't be here without her. So, when it comes to a badass female creator who basically pulled me kicking and screaming, that would be her. And then, going through and starting all of this and really working together to get into comics would be Sabine Rich, for sure. And Mike Crome gets an honorable mention. He
gets
is
an honorable female mention.
Domestic goddess. He gets an honorable mention.
He gets a female.
The three of us really started the same day, same comic, same everything together. We worked on it in tandem. Was it our comic? Wonderland? No, well, that was the second one. The second one, and then Joe's first Ancient Dreams that came out. That one, the three of us worked on completely in tandem. We were like stepping on each other's toes the entire time, between the penciling, the coloring, the inking, the everything,
Right.
And then with your guys' comic that for San Diego, same thing, and so it's always been the three of us, and then JP Roth making it all happen. So
it is. It's an interesting way you guys broke in. It was very what's the word? Uncommon.
Unconventional.
Unconventional. That's what I'm trying to say. Can't speak anymore. It was unconventional. It's interesting that you three were all so close already, and Sabine, yourself, and Mike are three of our most, renowned artists, I think. So,
thank you.
Obviously we have a ton of amazing artists, but you guys are all phenomenal. So it is an interesting kind of dynamic that you just all appeared. It was like you all were left on the Zenescope doorstep. You're like delivered by the store together.
The triplets.
So like the triplets. So like, where did they come from? These triplets. That's funny. What's it like? I guess another question about pinups. Let's talk about pinups real quick, because it's
absolutely
a big thing of what you do in your career now. Zenescope's known. We've set a lot of, I don't want to do a humble brag. I'll just do a regular brag. We've really helped bring back the collectible comic market over the last 10, 15 years. It was something Joe and I didn't do purposefully. Not Joe Ross, Joe, my business partner.
Yes.
There's two Joes we're talking about. We didn't purposely going, hey, we're going to bring back the collector's market. But we really helped shine a light back on the collector's market and really have branded Zenescope as the place to go for your collectibles as far as covers, limited edition covers. I don't know, it just sort of evolved on its own. I don't think it's something people can force. But what's it like as a pinup artist who does these sort of draw sexy female characters, and then you see these covers, these variant covers you're doing that are all limited edition covers, selling for, say, anywhere from $20 to $100 to sometimes, if it's a special, showcase edition, it could be $200. Is that weird to you? Is it amazing to you? Is it just you don't really think about it? You're just like, hey, whatever.
No, it's fucking awesome, man. I love it. I mean, why not? If it's a cover that people like and are, looking for and stuff, and I'm not like trying to say, okay, collectors, I'm here to gouge you. No.
Right.
I gotta watch out. But I have no issue with that. I think it's great. It's wonderful that there are people that like to collect art and collect pinup art and all of that stuff. I mean, I'm just thrilled because it's essentially, I used to draw Barbie princesses when I was 10, and now I'm just kind of doing the grown-up version of said pastime. Right. So I'm very happy. I'm thrilled. And, I feel like as far as a female drawing these characters and, the fact that comics used to be more male dominated, or it still is, or whatever everybody says, I personally have just found nothing but support and kindness from you guys, from everyone in comics. It's just been great. And so, drawing the pinup characters and, having the limited edition stuff, it's something I actually intentionally worked on being able to enter that limited edition market. Eric, it was just, he is the king of the limited edition market from an artist perspective. And, he trained me how to look at covers, how to set up a cover, what to do. And I'm not trying to blame him for any of my fails, but, successes, yes, Eric.
The successes are fun. And that's the thing, the price points set them. So, I mean, it's got to be interesting. I don't know how much you follow it, but like if we sell a book, sometimes we'll sell the book. We'll set the price point, whatever it is, $20, and then you see it on eBay for $100. That's got to be weird. Like that these comics do appreciate in value. Your artwork with your name on it is appreciating in value. It's got to be somewhat surreal, I would imagine.
I'm so grateful. I mean, I kind of look at it like stocks. And
I call it micro investing.
Yeah, and I look at it as like my own stock in the comic book industry. So every so often I'll snoop around on eBay and see,
Right.
Are my stocks falling or are they climbing?
Your stocks don't usually fall, I don't think. So
They better not. My God, I work so hard.
Damn that. We already covered that. Look at that. Sorry, I was looking at my sheet of questions I had. So what's one common myth about this industry that you think is prevalent that you would debunk? If anything.
It would have to do with that people who draw sexy girls are creepy.
Yes, or people who buy the covers are creepy.
Exactly. In my opinion, that could not be further from the truth. I've met most of the artists. I am one myself, and I have talked with all of the collectors that I have approached me. I've probably met thousands and thousands and thousands of collectors. And it's something that brings joy and happiness and, you know, fun. People actually care about artwork and how it's drawn and the imagination that was placed into the outfit, however skimpy it may be.
Well, I do think you're right. It's a great answer because it's true. I think it's also, there's a lot of BS. I mean, there's a lot of bullshit, you know, and it's a lot of it is sort of just trolling, or sometimes it's virtue signaling. You know, most of the people you meet, 90% don't care. You know, whether they draw it or buy it or like it or not. Like most people don't care, but there is that loud minority who want to shame people for either buying that kind of artwork or doing that kind of artwork, or publishers for publishing that kind of artwork. It's just how our society's kind of is right now, unfortunately. But you're right. I mean, it's a great answer because it is prevalent, and sometimes, you know, people won't admit that this is like, it won't be considered mainstream because it's not, you know, to them, they decide they're the gatekeeper somehow to the industry.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a good answer. Let's, you know, real quick, I know we're running short on time, but I wanted to ask you a little bit about Comic-Con in general, you know, and this is another sort of question I had. I think it's important for aspiring artists, or even creators and publishers and writers, you know, I've gotten asked about Comic-Cons a million times and what it's like and the importance of Comic-Cons, and right now there are no Comic-Cons.
Yeah.
Which is weird and has really screwed up this industry, I think, a little bit in some ways. But, you know, how have they helped shape your career as an artist, and like how have they helped you, you know, get work?
Oh, well, get work, that's everything, really. For me and the people that I currently work for, I would not be working for, well, okay, that's kind of an intense statement to say I would never be working for any of you if there weren't cons, but definitely, you know, Joe approached you at a con, you know, Joe, and then I went and approached Jimmy Palmiotti at a con. Terrified, but I did. And I got some interior work for DC. I would not have worked for DC if there hadn't have been a con that I could go and approach Jimmy Palmiotti and Amanda with work that I had done and kind of show my portfolio. Coffin Comics, I met Brian at a con, you know, so conventions really do make all the difference, I think, as far as trying to get into you know, get in front of an editor, because, you know, otherwise you're just another email, and, you know, the emails stack up. So I would say that is something that's important. And then for me, one thing that I really learned from conventions, because that was your other question, right? It was getting work, and then did conventions do for
right, like yeah, I guess it was sort of the same question wrapped in two different parts, but like how do they affect your career? I guess, like how have they helped form your, like, from first attending them, obviously it's the networking, and then moving forward now, has it evolved in any way? Is it more like, hey, I could just continue getting more work, I can sell my art at these conventions, because it's sort of a two-pronged thing, right?
For me, it's three, I think, now that I'm actually giving it some thought. First part, getting the work, talking to editors, being able to actually look around at comic book booths, comic publishers, and see, because, you know, there might be some series that a publisher creates, because so many publishers have multiple different series and they're not all exactly the same style. And if you're like, well, my style won't really work with X series, you don't write off the publisher. Then you can go look at all the rest of the books and sort of see, and then get to know some of the people there, even if the editor isn't always there, since you're always roaming about, Ralph.
Yeah, don't go by me.
About the con.
I'm by my booth like 12 minutes a day.
Exactly.
I missed you again.
So now, second one I would say is the being able to have your work. You get comps from publishers, being able to have a table, do sketches, do commissions. That is a massive part of an artist's ability to support themselves. That's number 2. Number 3, and I feel that this one is extremely important and something that I really learned, and it took me a while because I am quite shy and I have a hard time with, meeting people and stuff, and I have such a resting bitch face. So that's a whole nother conversation. But those are actually 2 parts of the industry, is the editors and the art, right? And if that's all you see, then you kind of forget about the very last factor that is the most important thing in whether you success or fail, and that is the collectors, the people who buy that work, the people who care, the people who are interested in it. That is the biggest deal, really. And, whether they're going to buy your work or not, or whether they like it or not. And so getting to be on the ground level and talk with people who actually are bringing you a book that you worked on, and when you're signing it or whatever, you get some feedback. They liked this, they didn't like that, they think this approach is more interesting, or just whatever. That is so important to kind of tying the whole thing up as far as being a comic book artist.
I just remember you saying that kind of sparked my last question that threw me for a loop when I lost the question. I guess it was stemming from a previous question we were talking about, but like, how do you take criticism? How well do you take criticism?
From someone who I know can draw. It's one thing when you're just getting a lot of critique just from, tons of people, and maybe the comment that you're getting has nothing to do really with what you currently are working on. That I kind of, I don't know what to do with it. But as far as like getting critique on my work, I really want it and I need it, because those are the times that you make those big leaps from, you just keep struggling with something and you're just like, this fucking hand, I can't get it to work or whatever,
Right.
Critique is how you grow. So it's sometimes it's a little bit painful, but I'm personally super grateful for it. And frankly, when someone is critiqued, you get like a portfolio review, and I'm talking about this from like, artist to artist or something like that. That's the kind of shit you should actually pay for, So, then you're getting somebody who's basically taking a minute out of their very busy life to help you become better. And that, the critiques that I've received have they're still in my head. And I got that critique 10 years ago, not because I'm so butthurt about it, but because it's helping me. I'm remembering it and being like, oh yeah, fuck, I need to not make boobs look like balloons, stuff like that.
Right.
So it's been very helpful to me. And so I love it. Hurts in the moment sometimes, but then usually it's how someone says their critique that, yes, you can be a complete asshole about it, or you can actually make it so that you can walk away and not feel like your life is ruined. And, so of course, you're not always going to get the critique said in a way that's going to make you feel happy, but at the same time, don't have the fear of getting a painful critique keep you from getting the critique, because that's really, at the end of the day, what's going to make you better.
So how do you think your style, your artwork style has really, what do you think's evolved the most over the last 10 years, let's give it the 10-year process, because that's really when you broke into comp. Has your style, do you think your style's really evolved? Like when you look at your older stuff of 10 years till now, or do you kind of think it's more nuanced? Is there anything in particular you go, oh, I used to do this but now I worked so hard. It like if it was drawing hands, let's say. Now I can draw hands much better than I used to. I know how as a writer I've evolved, but in an artwork sense, like what do you think is like your sort of evolution?
I look at my older work, and I don't want to ruin a piece for anyone. And I know I do that.
Don't call any out. Yeah.
I won't call any out. But sometimes I look at my older work and I'm just like, oh my God, that is an anatomical disaster.
Right. Okay.
So of course I've really tried to work on anatomy. At the beginning I really struggled with hands. Now I can draw hands. I have no problem drawing hands and feet. I can draw hands and feet. Buildings, yeah, I'm still working on it, but yeah, I would say though the weird thing, and I was watching a YouTube video about this a little while ago, at multiple YouTube videos about like, the artist's psyche and kind of how to deal with your own demons. And one thing that was very interesting is that like they were explaining that, and I'm experiencing this myself, where like I used to be a lot happier with my final product than I am now. And I think it was mostly ignorance back then, that I didn't know what was really wrong with it. And even though I was critical of my own work, I couldn't pinpoint things as well, whereas now I can. And so I will like send something in for final, upload the high-res file, and then have an oh shit moment. And right, Dave, I just did it on the Robin Hood cover. I'm so sorry I missed a spot. Take it back. He has to delete the files, get the new upload. I mean, my nonsense costs everybody more time. But I think that what happens is that the more you learn and you improve, you also have a better eye for seeing your own mistakes, and sometimes you just don't catch them until later, and it's a whole thing.
Right. Yeah, I think most of the time we're our own worst critics, but then sometimes I read something of my own. Was it wasn't a reviewer's, it wasn't like a critic's review, but it was like something I saw a post and somebody just said this was the worst piece of shit I ever read or something. And like I had read this is like an older book that I wrote, but and I had read a bunch of seen a bunch that like praised it, and like I was like, oh cool, it seems like it got, and I felt really good about the story. And of course there's things that stuck in my head like, oh, I could have done that better, this could have been better. You always do that.
Always.
And then you see that one thing. It just made me laugh because I actually saw it years later, so it didn't really hit me hard. Like I think if I would have saw it like when it came out, I probably would have been like, oh Jesus. And it was just like one person's opinion. Of course, not everybody's gonna like the stuff you put out, but usually you're your own worst critic, I guess, is what I'm trying to say in some way. But and I think like you tend to pick up more issues with stuff you do than other people normally would. I
obsess about it.
I want to talk to you real quick, and then I'll leave you alone. I actually do that, and then I have rapid fire, and then we're done. But real quick, I want to ask you about branding. Branding, like branding.
How odd? What?
Like, what are you talking? Well, because I think again, this is something that goes into, and I don't know how many people listening are aspiring to be in this industry, but how important sort of like we talked about Comic-Cons, we got off that subject because I went on a different tangent, but I wanted to kind of tie it into like branding yourself. Like you talked about resting bitch face.
Yeah. and it's intense.
And I mean, like, and I wanted to go back to like networking at Comic-Con and how important that is, but really branding your company or branding your like JP. You work with Rothic. You guys have your group of girls. Like it's you, it's JP, it's Sabine. Am I missing anyone? Mike. He's not a girl.
Mike and Eric are the honorary girls.
Mike and Eric are the honorary girls. But like Zenescope, we sort of came in, everybody kind of knows the Zenescope brand. As a female in this industry and like sort of like coming in with this like mystique, I always felt like you guys had this mystique going for you that
For real?
Yeah, it was just funny because that's what I wanted to ask you, because that's sort of the reaction I get when I brought that up, and maybe it was to Sabine, sort of like, really? A mystique? Like,
Yeah.
we were just like, do you guys purposefully like have this? I know, and I'm sure JP's more aware of it than you guys might be, because JP's sort of like, you guys were always like dressing up sort of in your
Oh, yes.
Sure. I don't even know how to like what it would be
Oh,
called.
well, I have a whole theory about the dressing up thing, and I
Yeah,
suppose the mystique you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, here's my theory.
I want to hear your theory.
It's the peacock theory.
Okay, peacock theory. That's good.
Here we go. So, when you're going to a con, it's kind of like going to a zoo, all right? And when you're going to the zoo, there's always the like main attraction. There's the white tiger or whatever.
So
right?
Marble's the white tiger.
Yeah, or Campbell or Ebas or
Okay.
I'm talking from an artist's perspective. So
Sure,
I'm not trying to leave publishers out of it. It's just,
sure.
And so there's the big, main artist that the convention has brought out and is doing their whole thingamajig for, right? And there's always at least one or two. So that will be the main picture on the brochure or whatever, just like, say, the white tiger, if you're not, aware of Comic-Cons, for instance. And so, you're going around to find the white tiger. But in the course of it, there's usually, at least at zoos I've been at, there's like a bunch of peacocks walking around. Nobody gives two shits about the peacocks. They're just hanging around. They're not even in a cage. They're just walking all over the place. But when a peacock does its whole thing with its feathers and does its little dancy thing, everybody stops and is taking pictures. Watch. The next time you're at a zoo, you will see that I'm right.
Right.
I'm a peacock.
So your theory is let's peacock.
Let's peacock.
That's funny. But I think it's something to be said with having this sort of brand of, attractive people in general, I should say. Because, Mike and Eric aren't too bad on the eyes, right? But like attractive group of people who are like, dressed up and always have these like, and I don't even, I'm trying to compare it to something besides the peacocking, because you guys always had these like this sort of vibe to you with the way you dressed. You all dressed similarly, and I'm not talking like any sort of like risque dress or anything like that. I just mean like sort of like just
I'm usually covered from like
like a gothic, almost like a goth vibe, like a sexy goth vibe.
Well, that was kind of, we are all in the process of like figuring out our own clothes, and everybody changes their minds and their opinions. The main thing that JP wanted is that we didn't show up in jeans and t-shirts or sweatshirts and sweatpants.
And like a lot of times people don't think of that. Like,
yeah.
And even go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead. You go ahead.
No. I'm just, because you walk around a Comic-Con and 9 times out of 10, that's what you'll see. Like, you'll see people sitting at the booth kind of dressed down, not really caring. They just rolled a lot of times and I've been guilty of it times too, where you're out drinking way too late and you're hungover and you just throw on like a t-shirt and go to your booth. But, there's something to be said about presentation, I guess. I guess this is my long-winded way of saying like presentation at Comic-Con is important, but like not just Comic-Con, but branding on a level of like beyond Comic-Con, like what's your brand as an artist in general. But I think it starts there, right? It starts at Comic-Con.
It did, for sure. And, that was something that JP Roth wanted us to just be presentable and, do a whole thing. As far as what we dress like and stuff, we're able to choose and make our own decisions. Half the time, though, we're all like sharing each other's clothes, which is why it looks like we're all dressing the same.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay,
we're girls. Half the time I'm in Joe's clothes or she's in mine and Sabine, and, it's a whole thing.
That's funny.
But,
luckily, you're all the same size.
Well, I'm the gentle giant of the three.
Gentle giant. Let's debunk that myth. Dawn is not a giant. Nor is she gentle.
In comparison.
She's very aggressive and mean.
As far as the branding and stuff, I think the main thing is, you got to do what's comfortable for you. If it doesn't feel genuine, then you can't keep it up. So it's almost, if anything, like at a convention, yes, it's kind of like you need to be a little bit bigger than life in order to make it in that kind of situation. And that was something that took me a while. I found cons extremely overwhelming. So you just have to be a little more of yourself than usual. Drink 3 cups of coffee works.
30? 30 cups.
3.
If you're me, it's 30.
My preference is the white Monsters. I just like the taste of those ones. I love them. Anyway. But then I've done live streams in my pajamas. So,
right.
there's both. But yeah, I think it's all just about finding what works for you and what kind of you can keep up and you can do consistently. You don't want to create a persona for yourself that doesn't come naturally, and hence you're not going to be able to keep it up. So that's the main thing. You don't want to decide that you're going to, your convention personality is going to be like ball gowns, and then you realize you fucking hate them, and then you're really sad. So
right. That's what happened to me.
Oh, Ralph, that's sad.
Well, I did the ball gown for the first couple of years.
Thank you so much, Ralph and Chris, and a special thanks to our featured guest, Dawn McTeigue. I'm your host, Mark Sells. Thank you for listening. And remember the Beatles when they sang, "Here Comes the Sun," and I say, it's all right. Happy spring, everyone. We'll see you all again next month, right here on Everything Zen.